Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sammy Hajjasad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Greetings, human listeners.
Greetings to everyone. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, I promise I don't always sound like a crazy person at the beginning of each episode.
But the only way to really know that is to go back and listen to every single previous episode to make sure he's not telling tales out of school. And the reason I mentioned that is that this is our 399th episode.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of episodes. That's
a lot of intros, the more I think about it.
That dates back to 2017 when we started this podcast. And it's fair to say the world has changed a little bit since then.
2017?
2017.
Wow.
8
Things
years.
did change.
We're doing roughly 50 podcasts a year, 50 episodes,
Roughly, yeah.
Not including the bonus episodes that nobody loves. And
we're also averaging a few marriages per podcast now.
Yeah. You could say those are completely unrelated facts, but now that you brought it up, definitely
we've changed, and children have been introduced.
One child. Let's not get carried away. One child. One child.
Yeah, that's true. Imagine 7 years ago that was one of the defining factors of this podcast. One of our hosts is also a father. Ben, while I've got you in the mood to chat, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find all of your latest work?
Sure, you can find my work at Motor Trend, at Inside Hook, and at Hagerty. And I'm bringing up Hagerty because I had a couple of really fun articles go up over the past week. I don't know when, dear listener, you were hearing this episode, but if you're hearing it the week it was released, recently wrote something about a movie called Hairpin Circus, which is a 1970s Japanese street racing movie, which is kind of like if Fast and Furious had been filmed by Michael Mann, and it's pretty cool. I enjoyed it, and I had a lot of fun writing about it. And I also had a piece go up at Hagerty recently about Volvo's personal car communicator, which was a security system in the mid-2000s where it had a little remote control that would flash if it detected a kidnapper's heartbeat in the back seat of your vehicle, which is honestly the craziest, wildest safety technology that's ever existed in the automotive world. And I finally talked to one of the people at Volvo who had a hand in designing it and demonstrating it when it first came out. So that was a lot of fun to do, and I was excited about those pieces.
Two stories that I think we got a tease of on previous episodes as well. We chatted a little bit about them.
It's entirely possible, but I can't assume that everyone listening right now has listened to all 399 episodes, Sammy.
Yeah, thank goodness we don't force people to listen to every previous episode.
No, just repeating the same introduction 399 times.
It's good enough. You can find my work at autotrader.ca, driving.ca, and Capital One's Auto Navigator. Now that we've got the introduction out of the way, though, we can get to the real meat of our podcast. All 399 previous episodes they mostly go this way. We get to talk about cars.
Usually 2 cars, sometimes 3 cars, occasionally 0 cars. Back in the grim periods of the early pandemic, I think we had a 0 cars policy, something like that.
0 cars policy.
So just going back to the pandemic for a second, because everyone loves talking about that.
Oh, okay.
I remember feeling like an idiot because during the wintertime, most of my cars are in storage, and pandemic hit in March. Most of my cars were in storage. There were no press vehicles anymore. And at that point I had sold my winter beater. I had a Subaru, and I hadn't yet bought the next Subaru in the long line of beater Subarus that enter and leave my life like ships in the night. But, so I was at home with no vehicles to drive because my Cadillac had a serious issue that was creating a no-start condition. It turned out to be bad wiring inside the kick panel on the passenger side. Very hard to diagnose. The Datsun was down as well for some type of electronic problem. And my Jeep was in pieces. It was like literally in the middle of having an engine swap done. So I was this automotive journalist, quote unquote, with no vehicles to drive, nothing. I had no way to get anywhere. And I felt like such an idiot. I was beating myself up constantly. Like, you have these 3 project cars and none of them run. What is wrong with you? Like, that is not a way to live. So I just needed to get that off my chest. I was thinking about that just now.
Well, we survived. You managed. You
Yeah.
got a car.
The
eventually.
horrors of having to walk places in a very walkable city called Montreal. But yeah, it was not great. I was not. It was not my proudest moment. So since then, I've always tried to make sure that at least one of the vehicles I owned is not only plated and insured, but can drive on the road under its own power without causing a calamity.
And what's the status of that right now?
Right now, the fleet is.
But the fleet is fine, but separated.
The fleet is 75% operational.
Okay, that's good enough.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the car that I've been driving recently, which is a Ford Mustang Mach-E GT. Unfortunately,
that's a lot of letters. That's a lot of letters.
As you may or may not know, the Ford Mustang Mach-E GT is an electric four-door crossover-y-like vehicle with about 280 miles of range.
Okay.
Actually, maybe a little bit more. I'm going to explain why.
Whoa.
I originally believed that this was going to be a 2025 model year vehicle, but instead, due to the way things turn out here in Canada, this is a 2024.
Sammy, there's probably 2024 still on the lot right now.
Yeah, there are probably 2021s out there.
Well, the reason I mention that is because I keep getting bombarded with ads from Hyundai telling me there are 2024 Ioniq 5s for sale. Like,
do you know why? Because that one doesn't have a wiper. The 25s have a rear wiper.
But you know what the 25s have that the 24s don't? The NACS plug. And I don't want to be using Tesla superchargers right now. So,
is it just the one plug? Is it only one plug?
I'm pretty sure it's just one. I don't see how they would. I mean, they'd have to redesign the fender to put two in. And they're not going to do that.
I thought it would be like the Taycan, and the Taycan, I believe one side of it has...
Do you think Hyundai has Porsche money?
Yeah, I do, actually. I think Taycan has one side as a regular plug and one side as a CCS plug.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier to like do that when your volume per year is like below 1,000.
Anyways, I've got the 2024 Mustang Mach-E GT, but please don't fast forward to whatever Ben's driving on this week's podcast, because there's an interesting element to this 2024. It's got what is known as, and I like this, it's called the performance update.
Oh, wow. That's
performance upgrade.
Imagine if you were marketing something and they're like, what should we call it? Well, what does it do?
It upgrades the performance.
There you go. Bam. Sold.
Can I tell you anything more specific than this really, really vague description that says for $1,000 and pressing a button on your Mach-E GT screen, your vehicle will gain an additional 100 pound-feet of torque.
If I don't push the button, can it be $500?
No.
If I have someone else push the button for me? Basically, I want a discount. I don't see why the button is involved.
You have to press the button to get the upgrade.
Why can't it do
when you press the button, you lose $1,000.
That is the worst button you could have in your car. Like, I have it's like...
It's a store. What am I supposed to say? This is, if anybody out there is a video gamer, this is downloadable content. That's what I'd like to describe it. DLC.
So I have a car where I don't have a button, but I have a lever under my right foot. And if I put that lever down, it costs me $100 at the fuel pump within 20 minutes.
There you go. Same. However, I have found out that the performance upgrade is tied to the VIN and not the account of the car owner.
So if you sell it, it's still available to the next person?
That's right. That's 100% right.
So you don't actually have to push the button to get this upgrade. You just have to, someone in like the long lineage of owners has to have pushed that button.
Okay. Now, the thing I need to mention here is that this apparently involves optimizing the thermal modeling of the powertrain and is only applicable to the 2024 Mach-E GT, okay?
What about 25?
Or all-wheel drive versions, I believe, of the oh, wait, maybe I'm going to double-check this here.
So,
no.
What?
It's only for this upgrade here, as far as I understand. It's only for the Mach-E GT, mainly because it involves what is known as the E-motor, which is one of the two motors that the Mach-E is equipped with.
Two extra motors, you mean?
the all-wheel drive system.
Okay. All right. So, question is, what does that bring the total amount of torque for the Mach-E GTE?
I mean, can you imagine 600 pound-feet of torque not being enough, and instead you get 700 now?
So it's like the Hellcat of EVs, is what you're saying.
It's insane. It's too much torque, I think.
$1,000 though, like. No, but I'm trying to think of other vehicles where would I spend $1,000 to get 100 pound-feet of torque? And I think that like it's a yes across the board. Like, I don't know. Is there a vehicle
But you already had 600.
No, you're not listening. It's 700 now.
But it's $1,000.
I pushed the button, Sammy.
Yeah.
No, but is there a vehicle? Is there a vehicle out there where you would not add 100 pound-feet of torque?
No, not
There's
thing.
not?
100 pound-feet of torque is appreciated no matter the car.
Okay,
it?
no, but I don't know if that's true because like I'm thinking more about what you said now. 600 pound-feet is a lot. 700 pound-feet is even more, right?
But you
like,
feel it. Like you'd understand. You get it. Like
is it meaningful though? Is like that's like one? That's
it's a demo period. That's what I want to know.
Oh yeah, like it's like shareware where like you get it and you push the button, but like it counts down from 5 to be like you need to buy this by X date or it's gone, and then you can launch. But
how would you know? Okay, sorry. Go ahead. Get to your. I know you're trying to make a really important point, and I'm making fun of you.
100 pound-feet of torque is only 18% more for this vehicle.
Oh, but $1,000 is how much percent more?
How much percent more of the purchase price?
Like the Mustang GT starts at 54,000.
It's got to be like 4% more.
Yeah.
So you're spending 4% more money to get 18% more torque. I don't know. I mean, okay, that's not terrible. But like, if you were in, say, a Subaru WRX,
yeah,
you would always spend that $1,000.
If you're in any other car, if your car had under 500 pound-feet of torque, yes, you would add that.
You would definitely go for it, I think. But if you were in like a Hellcat Red Eye, and I don't know, because I think you'd want the bragging rights. Yeah, maybe it is every single vehicle. No, here's one. If you had a Duramax heavy-duty GMC pickup,
okay,
that's already making like 1,100 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think you need 1,200 pound-feet of torque.
That's right.
I think you would be like, I'm good.
I think I'm running out of fuel quickly enough.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, the 2020 this particular version of the 2024 Mustang Mach-E GT also features the bronze package. Can you imagine the bronze?
Is the bronze package like that Lexus gold package?
No, I believe it was an Acura gold package that changed the badge.
There was a Lexus one for like the LS and the ES.
Oh, okay.
And it gave you those funky gold badges, aka brass badges. Wait, brass?
This one, the bronze element of this is that it. What?
It's just funny to me. Keep going.
It adds 20-inch bronze wheels, and then bronze door badges and a GT. Badge is also bronze.
How much range is subtracted by those wheels?
None.
Wow.
Well, I don't know yet.
Okay.
I think it already had 20 inches as a GT.
That's too bad.
There's also a bronze. Now, I don't know how to describe this properly because do you know how some cars have a grille?
Yes.
And EVs don't?
Okay.
But the area where the grille would be on an EV now looks like a grille.
So it gives you a fake grille.
It is bronze.
Okay. I want to go back to the $1,000 100 pound-feet of torque thing.
Yeah.
If let's say you had a base Toyota Corolla, and this
thing.
What's that?
The same thing.
No. You have a base Toyota Corolla, and it gives you another 100 pound-feet of torque, but it also increases the chances you will snap the half shafts on the drivetrain because it was never designed for this power. Like, what I'm saying is this power comes with no supporting mods. So
because it's a GT and it's already overbuilt, it's got the biggest brakes and
does that change your answer?
Tires.
Like if you had a Fiat 500 and you can add like another
making the car smaller
because I'm trying to demonstrate that maybe like another 100 pound-feet of torque on a front-wheel drive subcompact might degrade the driving experience. And
tell me,
it voids your warranty. It voids your warranty.
Where were you when the Chevy Spark EV was around with 400 pound-feet of torque?
Yeah. No. I'll tell you my funny Chevy Spark EV story was 2 years ago, when I was still in Montreal, we had a very, very deep cold snap, like close to minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is very close to minus 40 Fahrenheit. They essentially cross at that point, the two scales. Just to give you an idea of how cold that is to our American listeners. And there was this person who was digging their car out of the snowbank a little bit, and it was a Spark EV. And I was like, oh, like, what's it doing to your range to have because the batteries back then, like 2011, 2012, were very small. Yeah. And I was like, what is this doing to your range with the vehicle? And he's like, well, I can tell you that yesterday I tried to start it and nothing happened. Like nothing would pop up at all. He had to like jump start the 12 volt and then like plug it in and charge it up. So like overnight, the cold just killed that car.
Absolutely. Did he get out?
Yeah, he got out. He's fine. He's good. We maintained a correspondence. We're good friends now. Long-time listener. Shout out to Spark EV listener. Thank you for being there. 399 episodes later.
But I'm all over this. Like, I think this is the funniest thing that a car can have and look. I will admit, one of the main reasons I booked this Mach-E GT is because my dad is actually very curious about an electric vehicle, and he's he's in a stalemate, struggling between choosing the Mach-E for himself or a Hyundai Ioniq 5. It wouldn't be the GT that he would pick for himself, but one of the more mainstream models.
To me, this is no contest.
I said this as well, that I think that the Ioniq would be the better pick. And I dropped by to show him the Mach-E and to get his feelings on it. Especially given, like, my dad's in his 70s. This is very likely going to be the last car he buys.
Wow.
And no, the next one will be a lease, of course. And I don't know, his familiarity with how much interior car design has changed and exterior car design has changed. We're talking, this car has a massive touchscreen on the dash and really no other physical buttons. It requires a subscription for a couple of the features, namely like Blue Cruise, which is the hands-free driving feature. It has a relatively small and ineffective gauge cluster. It's a little tiny rectangle, maybe a little bit larger than most people's cell phone, and it just tells you the speed and range. While I think other vehicles I'm used to driving sometimes give you more information, like media information, temperature, or navigation information as well. And this one seems really like kind of Spartan in comparison.
Yeah, it feels like an older vehicle.
I wanted to also point out there's like all sorts of really bizarre design decisions. Now after driving, I mean, I think when the Mach-E first came out, we were pretty excited about it. It's this fairly high performance and long range electric vehicle, and is mainstream enough with the right performance and size and price to accommodate a large market of EV buyers.
Yeah, I don't want to I don't mean to denigrate the Mach-E because it's fine for what it is, but it feels like it's been on the market a really long time. And with almost no significant changes compared to the nicer, more interesting, more featured EVs that came out after it.
Sure, absolutely. But I'm going to tell you, after spending more time with this and remembering my feelings of relative excitement with my first experience with the Mach-E, the interior is really like there's nothing going on in the interior. In terms of design, this is just a cabin. Like, it just feels like they didn't design anything. This is where this is the shelf where the infotainment screen will go. These are where the vents are. And then on the exterior, there's a few really puzzling design decisions. Notably, there's no door handles. Instead, you have these buttons and then like pulls that you have to operate, which again, I thought would really like be weird to somebody whose last new vehicle was in 2007. And there's also no way to open the trunk from inside the vehicle. And
there's so many vehicles like that now, and it drives me crazy. I just want to pop the hatch. Don't make me turn off the vehicle and use the fob. It's so annoying. You're just dropping someone off and they need to get something out of the back. You have to go through this whole rigmarole.
And then as far as I can tell, there's no way to close the trunk from inside the trunk. You have to use the trunk mounted button, which if you've seen the shape and the hinge of the Mach-E GT, it can be it can be kind of high. I was like, I don't think my mom can reach that.
It's always a trade-off between, do I want that button to be on the trunk lid or the hatch lid, which is up high in the air, or do I want to do some kind of Indiana Jones style death-defying reach into the cargo area to tap the button on the side and then hopefully pull my arm out without making the sensors go crazy?
Well, this car also had a little pictogram of somebody swinging their foot underneath the car, and so I was like, "Oh, maybe this will do it." And I stood there dancing underneath the car forever, and my dad was like, "All right, I'm done. I don't want this car."
You're not my son anymore. That's like it's like an Indiana Jones trick of a different kind, where like it doesn't, like where he moves
it's like the swapping
the statue. It's like you're trying to do that with your foot, but it's just not going to work. Absolutely. You don't have the foot that Ford designed that feature for.
It's insane. This is why, GM used to do it with like they would put like a light of a badge, a puddle light, but then where you need to swing your foot.
And then in the winter, it would get covered with snow and it just wouldn't work.
Oh, yeah. Dang. On the other hand, I mean, I'm going to be blunt. While I would personally pick an Ioniq 5, and I'm trying to tell my father that that's my personal pick for the car, for his next car, there are a few things that I do like about the Mach-E. In particular, it drives really, really well. It has for an electric crossover with power and torque now, more torque.
How much more torque?
100 pound-feet more torque.
Okay.
It drives incredibly well. It is fast. It is responsive. The steering feels very good, and the ride quality, even on these 20-inch wheels, is pretty good. I was not that uncomfortable with it. The other element that I found worth pointing out, if you're going to compare this to an Ioniq 5, is that there's a front trunk as well, which the Ioniq 5 does not have.
You could make your own, though. Like with the Sawzall?
Yeah, I guess my dad is retired. He has some extra hands.
He has some time and he's creative. Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't seen that at SEMA, to be honest. Like, creative frunk solutions for EVs that don't have frunks. I'm into that. All you ever see is for glamping or overlanding is like bins on the roof on cargo holders. Why not, for aerodynamic purposes, why not just hollow out that front area? What could go wrong is what I'm saying. I'm sure that's crash safe.
Maybe we can just put a bunch of pockets under the hood, that's
a good idea, like stockings at Christmas.
Exactly. I think that would be perfect.
I want to go back to the 100.
Are you going to talk
for $1,000? No, seriously. So there's one thing about this that it keeps going over and over in my mind. We're talking about, is this a meaningful amount of performance that you're going to get for your money? And with the Mach-E, it's like 80% more power. Okay, that's fine. And it's not a huge amount of money. But at the same time, Sammy, when I'm driving an EV, I don't really care about how much acceleration it has, even in a performance model, because to me, acceleration is very much a one-trick pony. If you're on the street, it's something you do a couple of times to impress a passenger or scare yourself on a back road, and then you just go back to driving normally most of the time. In my opinion, what I like to do the most when I'm in an EV is change my driving habits so that I get as much range as possible from whatever level of charge I have. Because that's like a fun game I can play on like a long trip. Maybe it's a route that I know, like the back of my hand, so it's kind of boring. This is a way for me to gamify my driving experience. So I try to be careful with my braking. I try to do as much coasting so I can get the automatic regen to go in. I do all sorts of fun stuff like that. And then if I get to my destination and I've somehow beat the range estimate or like added range, that feels like a huge victory for me. So like I would almost pay more for some type of software upgrade that replicates that feeling.
I see. So yeah, when we're finally asked to design the next infotainment or trip computer for an automaker, this is what I would do essentially is it's always when you arrive or whenever the arrival estimation for how much range you'll have left, always make it like 1 mile less than what you actually get. So you always feel like you've achieved something. You've always like,
I want to be lied to by the trip computer in a way that makes me feel better about myself.
Exactly. We all need a little bit.
Also, what I would pay $1,000 to have a animation on the gauge cluster of little green vines and flowers that grow or wither depending on how
Wither.
How ecologically friendly my driving style is. And you know what? We had that technology in the Ford Fusion way back in the early 2010s, and we've somehow, as a culture, moved away from that. And I think we can't even begin to calculate what we've lost as a result of no longer having that. So $1,000, give me some vines, give me a computer that lies to me, and you can keep your torque. You can even redistribute that torque somewhere else in the lineup.
I love I remember it was not only was it vines on the hybrids, but a butterfly on the Focus EV.
What a beautiful world that was. 2012, 2013. We're coming out of a housing crisis. Things are better.
I'm scared that there was somebody in a marketing meeting who said, well, the Mustang buyer doesn't want butterflies dancing across his dashboard.
So make it a beautiful horse made of vines. What about that? That's creativity. That's the kind of creativity you don't get with a product upgrade called Power Upgrade.
I mean, if it was called, can you imagine horsepower upgrade? And then they add
it's amazing.
They add the leaf. Yeah.
Green Horse, Operation Ivy Horse, something cool, like they had Dark Horse. Why not? Anyway.
Green Horse.
Do you think they had to pay Dark Horse Comics like some money when they came up with the Dark Horse Mustang?
Do you think Ford is paying anybody anything? No, they're getting
Ford gets
all
royalties.
Free money.
Ford gets royalties from Dark Horse.
Exactly.
It's like when Suge Knight held Vanilla Ice off that balcony in LA and gave him half his royalties for Ice Ice
There
Baby.
you go.
Yeah, it's like that.
I think the most difficult thing that I've had to reconcile is that I thought this was really exploitative. I thought it was not cool to have a version of the car or a feature that was, pay to play. You need to join. You need to add an extra $1,000 to get the performance it can really deliver.
Is it better or worse than Porsche putting all sorts of blank buttons on the center console to remind you of the features you haven't paid for?
Yeah, it is better than that for sure.
Okay,
but I think I've come around to it because it seems like a meaningful upgrade for a reasonable price. I think any enthusiast has probably done the cost calculations for a performance upgrade on a gas-powered car, and they probably are not getting that kind of return on their investment. And
100 pound-feet of torque for $1,000? Yeah, that doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen, right? And it also requires time and like tuning, right?
Now,
and
I want to know, any Mach-E GT owners out there, is Ford pushing this upgrade? So like when you turn your car
again,
on,
this is only for 2024.
Yeah, so when you turn your vehicle on, does the screen have like a button that pulses and it says $1,000, let's go, or like something like is it like a pop-up ad? Because and you might laugh at me, but wasn't it Chrysler that got in trouble, or Jeep that got in trouble last month for having pop-up ads on its infotainment screens that couldn't be closed?
Yeah, it was. I don't know the context of that. I only saw the headline.
Yeah.
I would love to see maybe I'm going to watch a YouTube video of what happens here. Jeep ads.
So if Jeep did that, then it's not a stretch that Ford could be like, I mean, it would make sense, because the idea of a whole over-the-air update is that you don't have to go to the dealership, but dealerships are great places for customers to be upsold, floor mats, undercoating, big wheels, whatever. And if you're an EV owner, you're not necessarily at the dealership as much anymore. So being able to like electronically strong arm you into an upgrade over a distance feels like something that would be allowable by this software.
My understanding is it would put this ad that says Flex Care Extended Care Premium Plans are factory backed and offer you peace of mind in case of a mechanical breakdown. Press the call button to speak to a specialist, and the odometer must be less than 36,000 miles to purchase. That is the ad that they were being presented.
I feel like a company advertising an extended warranty to me on a new car is not confidence building. Like you're sending the wrong message.
The Jeep, they knew that.
I guess.
The owners knew that. Come on now.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with this Mach-E GT power upgrade pack?
I mean, I'm constantly reminded of the little things here and there that I like and dislike about the car. I think I went through the major ones. The little ones that I didn't realize I missed. Things like being in control of your regenerative braking that you can do in other vehicles, basically with like a paddle shifter or a button.
Yeah.
You don't get that opportunity in the Mach-E GT. You only have a one pedal driving style,
See, that's one of
or
the fun things that I like to do in an EV. That's on the list of the ways I try to increase the range, but I don't always miss it because I don't know if I'm any better with the paddle than the automatic system. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
but you and I both live in hilly cities, right?
Well,
So
not I
at
wouldn't
least you
call it a
know,
city, but yes,
yeah, at least you know that when you go down the the hill, you could just throw on the regen and recoup something, right?
sure, yeah,
And you can't and to deny me that opportunity and
yeah.
watch myself start the speed start picking up as I fly down this hill.
Deny me the ability to make a confusing stop in the middle of the road that's not signaled to anybody else because I
Yes,
misjudge the pressure on the paddle.
I do love that. I love that a lot. Just all sorts of strange things like that. And the lack of physical buttons, I think, really does. It shows them in the Mustang here. So in this two-car lineup, this two-car matchup, I'm going with the Ioniq. At the end of April, I also have a Nissan Aria, and that's something my parents have zero understanding of what that is. They constantly ask what is an Aria
Which of
and
the
why
36 trim levels are you driving?
I think they've contracted a few of them.
Oh, they're
Um,
about to contract all of them when they perhaps go out of business? Question mark.
they
Scary
they
times
sent
for
me
Nissan, everybody.
they sent me a press release either yesterday or today about it,
About
about what
going
they're
out of
doing.
business?
No,
Dear
about how
Sammy,
they're going
you
to
might
turn
have
them.
heard the rumors.
I think they're stop it. I think they're trying to make an SUV.
Oh yeah, it's an Xterra.
Yeah, an Xterra EV. How nice is that?
That makes sense. I mean, why not?
And they're going to make the Leaf a crossover
Of
because
course, they're gonna make the Lancer Evo Leaf
that'd be dope. Stop
Corolla
it! You would buy
Cross.
one if you had the chance.
I would buy what, a Leaf crossover?
A Leaf Lancer Evo.
Leaf Lancer Evo. I don't know, man. Sometimes, like when you're at a dog show and there's a confusing breed on
I
the
do
screen.
know sometimes when I'm at the dog show.
I know you're all about that royal corgi stuff, but sometimes there's a confusing breed and you're just like, I don't know how this happened, but I'm uncomfortable. Those ears,
to
those ears and that tail don't match.
I went to a cat show recently.
You were just mocking a dog show?
But
And you're
it
like,
was
who goes
mainly-
to dog shows? I only go to cat shows, a perfectly normal activity. Did you go with your son? Did you go with your son?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to let him see some cats in their natural environment.
Nothing
I
says
guess.
natural environment like cat show.
Now, the problem was all of these cats were sleeping until it was time for them to do their showing thing. But one or two people let my son pet the cat, and he thought that was super cool.
That is pretty cool. Where was this show? Like, what?
It was here in Hamilton.
No, but what facility was it in? Was it like a cafe or was it like a?
No, it was like a real. It was like a real convention center.
Was it like when we went to the dog show at the X a few years ago?
It was no. That was a spectacle.
Yeah,
That
but you
was-
could go and meet the dogs after. Remember,
Yeah,
we did
no.
that. Yeah.
It's not like that. That was a show. Like that was Super Dogs. That
All right.
was wild. That
See,
was
so you
cool.
did go to a dog show. Remember,
you.
we went to that together, and
Yes,
earlier
that's
you were
fair.
making me feel like the world's weirdest person.
No, I was just saying I don't frequently go to dog shows or
Right.
remember my feelings of looking at the dogs with the mismatched ear and tails.
All right, okay, moving on.
Ben, what are you now that we're quickly approaching episode 400? What are you driving this week?
So, I drove a 2025 Genesis G80 sedan, and before you at me and say, Benjamin, didn't you just drive a G80 and a GV80 and a G80? Yes, I did do those things, except two of those are SUVs. One of them is the electric version, the G80 electrified. This new 2025 G80 sedan has been refreshed. And I was really curious because I like the electrified version of the G80. It's a good vehicle. It has decent range, good power, it looks sweet, and it's comfortable. It's a little expensive because it's, a luxury car. But there were a couple things about that made me want to try the gas version. Specifically, I just drove the 5 Series, the 550 plug-in hybrid
Right.
that we talked about it last week. I wanted to go back to back with a 5 Series redesigned and a refreshed G80 because I had not done that in a super long time. And the other thing that I wanted to check out was whether the drivetrain, the gas drivetrain, still felt interesting after having driven the, torque heavy electrified version. So, Sammy, I have a couple of thoughts. I'm not going to dwell too much on the G80 because, we've talked a lot about it recently. But what I noticed immediately about the interior of the 2025, the gas model, I really, really like the detailing that's done. I don't like the fact that it has the giant screen that I've complained about in every Genesis, but as far as giant, long, rectangular screens go, everything around it looked fantastic. The interior, compared to the BMW, was much nicer. It felt much more plush. Not to downplay the luxury of the BMW. The 5 Series is fine, but I feel, again, the details in the Genesis were next level, and I think that this refresh has brought that to the forefront.
Okay. It's really important to talk about the Genesis. It's really important to talk about the Genesis in context to the German automakers, because I feel like Genesis frequently wants to be mentioned alongside the European luxury brands. And I think when they first debuted with the G80, G70, and G90, they were clearly playing in that field. I wonder now, after generations of upgrades to those European competitors, whether or not the G80 still feels competitive in those elements.
So
it's nice to hear that the interior has changed. Like, it's changed dramatically, I think, from the last the non-refreshed model.
It is fantastic. I mean, even the seats are gorgeous to look at. One other interior detail I wanted to mention that I really noticed was the G80 electrified has a high floor because that's where the battery is, and the vehicle was not initially designed as an EV, so they had to find space for the battery. It's the same with the GV80 or GV70, sorry, electrified. But in the SUV, because you have more headroom, you don't notice it as much. In the sedan, it's quite noticeable. It's even more noticeable when you go back to the gas model.
Right. It feels like super spacious.
It feels like way more appropriate. That's the one. I think that's the biggest flaw of the G80 electrified is just, and I'm not a tall person. I'm well under 6 foot, and just the cockpit sensation of the gas version because of the seating position is excellent. And in the G80 electrified, it feels compromised. So that was the other thing I took away from the interior.
Okay. But the other thing that you mentioned was the powertrain, and I'm really eager to hear how you felt that the powertrain of the G80, if it's evolved in line with the interior.
Well, it hasn't really evolved. It's I mean, I had an all-wheel drive model. It'll do 60 in 5.2 seconds. That's pretty fast. It's not crazy. It's 375 horsepower, 391 pound-feet of torque from a twin-turbo V6. The motor is fine. It does exactly what you need it to do. The personality shift that I noticed when getting out of the 5 Series, though, is the chassis of the G80 does not feel as focused as the plug-in 5 Series. I mentioned last week that the sport modes in North America, we can't alter the sport modes. We had some comments on our YouTube channel where someone mentioned that they were able to, in the 5 Series, go to Sport Plus and make changes and stuff. I'm not sure if that's specific to Europe, but the plug-in version in North America doesn't have that capability. So it's not like the 550e was particularly a sports sedan, and I didn't really consider it a sports sedan, but it did feel, the suspension did feel more focused than in the G80. The G80 felt very luxurious, more floaty than the 5 Series. Power delivery is fine. It's great, but it's not exactly a car where you step on it and it punches forward. It's more like a confident building acceleration over time. The personalities between the two vehicles are quite different. And I will say that the G80 feels bigger behind the wheel than the 5 Series. And even like looking at the two cars in my driveway, the 5 Series has chunked up. Like, it's got the big vertical grille and kind of a blocky stature. It's almost like BMW was like, people like crossovers, right? Well, let's make a crossover sedan. And then they did it in a way that wasn't like Toyota with the Crown.
Yeah.
It's not quite there, but it is like a chiseled kind of sedan. It has presence in terms of its vertical real estate. The G80, on the other hand, is long, sinuous, with like a fastback kind of look to it. And as a result, it comes across as a larger vehicle, whether it actually is or not.
That's an important thing to talk about, I think. I don't think anybody should downplay this part because the G80 isn't just a luxury car. It's, to me, what I would call it is an executive sports sedan. And the sports sedan is an important part and is what BMW has marketed so successfully with the 5 Series, that it is basically a larger, enjoyable luxury car.
But
it's
not
like
in all trims, as I've discovered.
Yes, this is something we talked about. I think last week we mentioned that, right?
Yeah, and I think it's because the plug-in that I drove is like much heavier because of the extra battery. The G80 doesn't have that battery in there. So one of the differences in the suspension response on the, the rough spring roads that I'm dealing with, I had a lot of suspension noise in terms of like stiff thumping from the BMW because it's handling all that extra weight over the rough roads. The G80 was floatier in that respect. It did not transmit as much roughness into the cabin because it's significantly lighter.
Interesting. But this is what I'm trying to say is that, like, I thought that there was an element where the Genesis used to be fairly enjoyable to drive, really responsive, but now we're getting it has been surpassed in that feel, right?
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
No, I don't mean to undercut you. I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I want to, going back to the ownership experience, the driving experience again, Genesis has stayed pretty good about keeping buttons and toggles and all sorts of stuff on the dashboard. And some of the infotainment screens, the way I mentioned it has a big infotainment screen, but the climate controls and whatnot, they're located below it. You don't have to dig through a bunch of menus. And while those are buttons on a small screen itself, they are very obvious and easy to use. There's only one issue with how Genesis has done the interior. It's that on the center console, there are 2 identically sized twirling knobs.
Oh, right.
One of them's for the transmission and the other one is for everything else, like the infotainment.
Yeah.
And you are going to make that mistake. Like, it is going to happen. And fortunately, most of the time it means you go to put it in drive and you're just spinning the infotainment screen. It's not the other way around.
That's brutal. Yeah.
But there's no need for this. I like the idea of a shifter that's non-traditional, but maybe put them farther apart. They're literally 3 inches apart.
They're like the same size too, right? Like, that's the main issue.
The only way you could tell the difference is the shifter has a recessed center, like a cup kind of, and the other one doesn't, which means if you know that and you're touching it, you'll feel it. But if you have gloves on or you're not looking down, it's easy to make the mistake.
Brutal. I agree. I think that's a wild idea. I don't know how, in the world of like meticulously tested and designed vehicles, this thing can pass.
It's not the worst, right? Because wasn't there an Acura one that was right beside the volume control?
Yeah, it was bigger than the volume. Yeah.
And then there was the Lincoln, the buttons on the dash that were, I think, right beside a whole bunch of other buttons, like for the infotainment screen. Like,
yeah, you would like brace your thumb on the park button.
Yes. It's like, and you're an FRS BRZ owner. Remember the touch screen that came with certain versions of the FRS, where in order to brace yourself to use it, you had to turn it off basically by pushing the button. It was like the only physical button was in the worst possible place.
Yeah, I think I don't remember if it was the FRS. I don't have a touch screen on mine, but yeah, that's so funny. I remember those.
Yeah.
I don't know how things pass, because I've also seen, I need to talk to somebody about this, because sometimes infotainment systems don't travel. Have you heard, like, do you understand what I mean? Like, in different markets, an infotainment system can be by a completely different brand.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of technology partnerships and whatnot.
That's wild to me.
You know what's wild to me? So this is kind of off topic, but kind of on topic. I was writing an article about the Lexus RZ recently, which essentially it's the Solterra with more luxury, kind of. But there's an all-wheel drive version and a front-wheel drive version. And they each have a 71... One of them has a 71.4 kilowatt hour, and the other one has a 72.8 kilowatt hour battery.
Most minute difference.
Not only that, Sammy, they're made by different companies.
Yeah, well
so
done to you.
What is that? Like, that is wild. That would be like if Ford offered a 5.0 engine and a 5.01 liter engine in the Mustang. And they were built. One was built by Cosworth, and the other one was built by Ford. And
I wonder if it has to do with like output of the battery
there's got to be some
to match the because one has dual motors and requires more voltage in a way.
Yeah,
and the other one was
that's a reasonable explanation. If every other automaker on the planet
yeah.
was able to like make it work with one battery company.
But I think Toyota was in a hurry. I think they were in a hurry.
Oh, yeah.
To make
They
this
were.
car,
They
right?
saw how popular the Solterra and the whatever the other one is called, the BZ4X TW79,
Yeah.
and they're like, we need to get Lexus in on this, and we cannot wait.
That's right. Anything else you want to tell me about this G80? How much was it again?
They start at 57
That's
US.
such a nice price point. I
Yeah,
think.
but I think that's the. Do they still have the 4-cylinder model, or did they ever
yeah,
have?
good
Did they
point.
ever have a 4-cylinder model? Let me hit the build thing here, which is
The
really,
Build-A-Bear?
The Build-A-Bear, really hard to find. Okay, trim levels. Yeah, they do still have the 4-cylinder. So that's 57. The sport version that I drove, there's only one. Okay, I take that back. I thought there was only one sport trim, but there's actually two. It's all of the V6 models are called sport. They all have all-wheel drive. They start at 69. So there's the advanced, and then there's the prestige at 77. So that's a lot of money. And also, if you're going for the prestige, you end up with like 20-inch rims instead of 19s. And that's the model I had with the Napa leather and everything that looks super nice. But I don't know. I feel like, is it worth paying another $9,000 for that? Not entirely sure. A comparably equipped 5 Series is going to be more expensive. There's no question.
when you can just spend $1,000 to get 100 more pound-feet of torque.
Yeah, that really changes the equation for all of us. The other thing, though, to consider right now is if you were shopping for a 5 Series, it's a little weird because you used to be able to get that M550, which I think would be kind of the equivalent, quote-unquote, of the top-tier G80. Mm-hmm. Although that car clobbered it in terms of power. Now, if you're looking at pricing and you look at the plug-in is $73,000. So that's right between the two 3.5 liter twin turbo versions of the G80. If you want to get a 5 Series that has comparable horsepower, the 540i xDrive is $65,000, and that's actually less expensive than the G80, which has the same 375 horsepower. So it's a world where some versions of the BMW are I'm actually not even sure. Yeah, the parity between them is within like $1,000 to $2,000 either way. So it doesn't undercut the 5 Series as much as it used to because that kind of beating thumping chest gorilla model is not there anymore.
Right. So does that mean that this is way harder to recommend then?
No, not at all. I think it's a great car. I don't need I say this as someone who owns a luxury sports sedan, but I don't need a large sedan to feel sporty. I don't particularly enjoy that kind of driving anymore. I prefer my sporty vehicles to be lighter. So when I'm looking at a large car like this one, I look at other things like, is the power good enough? Is it adequate? Does it feel worthy of the price? Does the styling knock me out? Do I turn around and look at the car when I'm walking away from it? Does the interior just feel beautifully and carefully made? Is it comfortable on the road? Is it quiet? It's a big yes for all of these things with the G80. And the G80 is easy to use. There's no tricky, weird interfaces. Every button does what you think it's going to do. It's generally a very driver-friendly car. And it's sad that I have to give it points for that, because it indicates where we've gone in terms of software and having things be increasingly complicated. So
right.
I like the idea of there being different flavors of sports sedan or luxury sedan for different types of buyers. And I think this is one of the most compelling concoctions you can get.
Very cool. Okay, that's good to hear. I mean, I think that's an interesting perspective. I don't know. One of the things that you mentioned that's important is that you said this is no longer the way I want to drive, or no longer the driving style I'm interested in, which means that there's still going to be customers out there who what I'm trying to say is that's a very personal approach to.
It is, but I think it's informed by the fact that 10 years ago, these vehicles did not weigh 5,000 pounds, 4,500 pounds. You know what I'm saying? Like, remember when the Hellcat came out and it was like 4,400 pounds and we were all like, wow, that's so heavy. And nowadays that's par for the course for any luxury car. And those cars have half the power that the Hellcat had. So
yeah, great point.
I feel like there's this embiggening of sedans that's occurred, and the response from automakers to these ballooning weights has been to just give us more horsepower and more mechanical grip with larger tires. But what you lose when you do that is any kind of connection with driving. And it's fundamentally changed the experience of these cars. When I say I don't like that type of high performance experience, I guess what I'm saying is I don't particularly value a disconnected high horsepower driving experience.
Right.
And I don't think most buyers do either. I don't think I'm alone in saying that. I think that, as I mentioned with EVs, I think that thrill of the acceleration largely fades, and I don't think you use it on a regular basis. And I think people are just happy to have a good amount of power and aren't using the full, extra 100 pound-feet of torque they bought for $1,000.
Right.
So that's kind of my perspective on it. Sammy, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about before we ended things, and that's we had Rob write into us to talk about something we discussed last week. I mentioned that I was driving the 5 Series, and it had a attention feature, like a driver attention monitor, that did not handle my polarized sunglasses very well. Is this their prescription? I can't take them off. So it would just a lot of the time it was yelling at me to keep my eyes on the road, even though I was probably keeping my eyes on the road a fair bit. In any case, Rob said they had the same problem with their i7, and the attention monitor was just going off incessantly. And what worked for them was adjusting the steering wheel up and down so that it could see there's like a screen that has the little detector that watches your face, and it gave it a better view. And they said that once they did that, it really kind of fixed the problem, even with polarized lenses. This is something I tried with the 5 Series, but I probably didn't try hard enough. I have this quote unquote long torso that Sammy loves to tease me about. And that puts me in a weird steering position where a lot of the time the steering wheel will physically block those monitors, and then it will either turn them off or turn off like other safety features because it can't tell if I'm looking at the road. So I'm always trying to balance where the top of the steering wheel is with whether the system can see my face. And on some vehicles, the Genesis was a good example of this. The system is actually on the steering column so that it moves with your steering column and it can't be blocked. But I don't think the BMW one is like that. I think it's integrated into the gauge cluster. So Rob, thanks for writing in with that tip. It is good advice for anyone that's having this problem with their own car.
I always feel like there should be an alert that suggests that. Do you know what I mean? If the car is complaining enough times within a given period of time, it should probably suggest, hey, maybe you should move the steering wheel.
Yeah, but I agree with you, but imagine how confusing it would be to people who don't understand what the technology is, where it's like, can't see face, try moving steering wheel, and you're like, what? What I'm saying is not everyone has the cozy relationship with the Subaru robot that you have.
I don't know. I'm anxious about my robot situation right now.
Why? Is it sending you threatening emails?
Yeah, I haven't talked to the robot in a long time.
Is that a euphemism?
No, that's the reality. I haven't been in a Subaru with driver focus.
Your own Subaru doesn't have that?
No, that's a top trim thing.
Excuse me. You can afford cat shows, but you can't afford driver attention.
The cat show was the main reason it was cheaper than going to the zoo. But
okay, a little
bit more expensive.
First of all, I hope so.
A little bit more expensive than just going to a pet store and looking at all the poor cats and dogs.
Going to a pet store is free, but also sad because they don't have families.
But the pet stores we have allow owners to bring their pets in to shop around with them. And my child gets so psyched about
shop around.
Yeah, you can bring the dog in and on its leash.
Oh, I thought you meant bring it in to put it on sale, and I was like, God, what kind of dystopian pet store is this?
But the main issue I have is that they obscure the grooming area, which is probably for the best.
Yeah, there's probably a legal reason for that.
They don't want to get stoked for all these people looking at the dogs.
There's always someone who ruins it for everybody.
Exactly.
Now you can't look at the grooming room anymore. You can't make eye contact with the rabbits. There's always something. There's a story for everything.
Oh man, I mean, there's so many weird things that children do, but when my kid sees the guinea pigs or the hamsters, he gets so excited, and he looks at me, he moves his mouth the way they they kind of are always moving their mouth.
Yeah,
and he's making no noise but moving his mouth, and he thinks it's the funniest thing on the planet.
If you want to move your mouth and not make any noise but make your fingers do the talking, you can get in touch with us in a number of ways. I would love to hear if any of our listeners have also been to a cat show. I am super jealous that Sammy does this with his son and not with me, and has never even suggested it. Many times I visited him. You can get in touch with us in a number of ways. The easiest way is go to unnamedautomotivepodcast.com, fight your way through the 399 episodes that are there to find the contact form, and just enter in your question or your comment or your cat show thoughts and send it our way. You can also find us on Instagram. I'm at Hunting Benjamin and Sammy is at Sammy_ha, like you're laughing. And finally, you can get in touch the old-fashioned way through email, benjamin@benjaminhunting.com.
Very true. That's all I really want to plug on this week's podcast. What are you driving next week?
There's also a Ko-Fi. We haven't talked about that in 100 episodes.
Ko-Fi in a while. Beyond that, you want to know what's happening next week. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I'm driving an Acura RDX.
Okay, wow. Unexpected. I am driving a Ford Ranger, just the basic, normal Ford Ranger.
Great. That sounds exciting.
That was a weird silence. Sorry, it's not an RDX. We can't both drive an RDX the same week.
We have done that before.
That's true, and it was a fantastic episode. Everybody, thank you for listening.
Take care, everyone. Bye.